Thank you for tuning in to The Management Game, the podcast for managers who don't know what the hell they're doing. We're your hosts, Vicki Brown and Suzanne Ferris.
And today we're going to be talking about communications, how it's more than just the words that you say. So, as we've said a couple of different times, words matter. And very clear communication is much more than saying the words and expecting someone to fully understand and get you. How you say what you're trying to convey makes a big, big difference, and it changes your message. Today we're going to look at a wide range of different ways to communicate.
That sounds great. But first I want to talk about why communication is such an important topic. When we're communicating well, if we do it effectively, people are able to know us better. They're able to understand what we need and what we are trying to get them to do. The big thing about this is it allows people to trust each other. When you have that trust, it's going to strengthen your relationship. And I think of this as a cycle that works in both directions. So you start off, you're trusting each other. Now your relationship is getting stronger because you've got mutual respect for one another.
Right.
It's really hard to respect someone you don't trust.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to build a true relationship with someone that you don't respect. So once all of this starts happening, you've got this relationship, it's very solid, it's very strong, it's going to lead the way to you being successful.
And it can go the other direction, can't it? Where you start off with this strong relationship that you have, this mutual respect that you have for each other, that leads to even further and more deepening of a trusting relationship. And that impacts your communication and makes it even more effective.
Sure.
So it goes in both directions.
Yeah, if I don't trust you, there's a great possibility I may lie to you. I may have a hidden agenda about what I really want, and there's no way we're going to be successful.
And I absolutely agree. And I think the cornerstone to this, the pivot piece of this is trust. And no amount of communication can be truly effective without first having some measure of trust between the parties. Without trust, we've all seen this. This is where things just go sideways, downhill, everywhere.
I you're right. And one of the things that I think it's important for people to understand is if there's a break anywhere in this cycle, you've got to go back and rebuild it. And the only way you can do that is by having an open and honest conversation. But when we talk about building trust, what does that look like? Well, if you and I can basically get on the same page, if we have a shared view of what our reality is like,
a common vision, a common goal.
Right. If we are true about what we're looking at and trying to get there together, we're going to be able to rely on one another.
And when we know who each other is, we have spent the time to build trust and build a mutual relationship. trust starts to happen. I get to know you. You're my friend. You're not my foe. You're not my enemy. I don't fear you. The more I get to know you, the more I realize that I have no reason to fear you.
Right.
I can speak what's on my mind.
Yeah, if I'm not afraid of you, I can be honest in what I think about the situation we're in, the project we're working on, the things that we have to do, without worrying that you're going to come back at me.
And judge me.
Yeah.
And, all of the things that judging another person does. When I believe you're on my side, when I believe you've got my back, that you were supportive of me, trust continues to be built.
If we can't get to that place and I don't trust you, it's different than I either trust you or I'm ambivalent. If I don't trust you, it starts to damage the relationship because now I see you as my enemy.
Right.
I see you as working against me. I'm not going to engage as easily.
And it's an unknown as to, I don't know you, so I don't know how you're going to react to something I propose or a new idea I have. So I'm going to keep quiet. I'm not going to make myself vulnerable by sharing something that's important to me.
And then I start to make assumptions.
Yeah.
I start to think that we see the world very differently, even though we may see them the same, but I don't trust you to go there and have that conversation.
I think we're going to disagree. I just kind of don't imagine us agreeing, so the counter of that is we're going to disagree. So, I start putting up walls.
Yeah, and I start to think that you're in it for yourself. Mm-hmm. It's not about us, it's not about the team. You're going to deal with your own interests, and what's going to happen is I'm going to start to deal with mine. And now that chasm gets even wider until we get to the point that I'm afraid you're going to start working against me.
Right.
And now the relationship that we even started to build has just eroded.
And this is the exact situation that I am trying to help a couple of different managers work through right now. Is so much time has gone on where there was a complete lack of trust, a misunderstanding of shared goals. And they are so far apart that I don't know that they can get back together.
Yeah.
And find any kind of trust with each other or even common ground. It's a really, really sad situation.
So when we're talking about communication and we're talking to managers that are just exploring this idea, we're telling them they've got to instill trust.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways they can do that?
Yeah, some really, really practical ways is first, trust other people. Demonstrate that you can extend trust and overtly tell people, I trust you. Use that word in your vocabulary.
Words matter, right?
Words matter. Absolutely. Take some time to uncover common values, common interests. I mean, even if it's just your commute, or in today's world, lack of commute, but where do you live? What do you have, a single family home, or are you in an apartment? Just finding out more about each other is going to help.
I'm sorry. That ties into what we had talked about before in knowing your people, knowing yourself, and in extending trust to others. What may be hard for us to do, and I think is something we have to practice and work at, is not being judgmental.
Right.
When we go in and we prejudge people based on what we've heard, based on our conscious or our unconscious biases, it makes it difficult. So when we're overtly working at instilling trust to better our communication, we've got to suspend our judgment.
And that's a hard thing to do, but the first step in any of this is being very mindful and very conscious of it. Some other ways to literally build trust is give sincere praise when things go right. Find those things that are going right and praise them. Celebrate even the minor successes that happen on your team. And like I said at the beginning, give trust to get it.
I think it's also important in establishing a truthful relationship. You say give praise when it's due, but give constructive criticism when it's due. We don't live in a Pollyanna world, and sometimes we have to point out things to people, and we can do that graciously.
Absolutely. And in a constructive, which I really like that word better than positive or negative.
Right.
But, when you construct something, you build it. And when you give constructive feedback, you're helping to build something to be better. And, trust is one of the biggest ways for communication to be stronger. But I also think that another big thing is for managers to realize that they can be transparent. They can keep their people appropriately informed. Be credible. Share what you know. And explain yourself. This is why I do what I do. This is why I show up at 7 a.m, because I'm a morning person. I, have my energy at that time. I don't expect everyone to be in at 7. It's just me. So that's an example of being transparent.
Okay. And you can also invite others to share. You can invite them to be transparent. It's more than just, again, the I want to be your friend. But people want to tell you about themselves. We love talking about our families. We love talking about our friends, what we did over the weekend. But I may be uncomfortable doing that unless I know you're interested.
And I invite it by saying, how was your weekend? Did you do anything fun? And I invite you to share things like that with us. In a brainstorming session or even a staff meeting, reach out to some of those people who are typically very quiet. Ask their opinions of things. What do you think about this? Would this work? Have you seen it work before? It's a fantastic way to bring others into the conversation.
Another thing that I think especially is good for managers instilling trust in their team is to be vulnerable. And specifically, I'm talking about if you don't know something, it's okay to admit it. It's okay to ask your subject matter expertise, your subject matter experts to teach you something. And there's nothing that I think a team member enjoys more than teaching the boss. But it has to be authentic. It has to be genuine, not just for show. It makes you more human. It makes you more approachable.
And the counter of this, Vicki, haven't we all experienced those people who don't know something, but they fake it? They make up something. And it's not only annoying, but it's just such a waste of time.
And it's a demotivator. Believe me, when you are faking something, your people know you're faking it. And that starts to build that wall again that you've been working so hard to try to break down.
I think, similarly to admitting you don't know is admitting you're wrong.
That's a hard one.
We've talked about this with a little group of managers in the past, and people were kind of all over the board as to whether or not they would ever admit to their team that they were wrong. But to me, this has been my experience, is when you admit you're wrong, you can not only learn from that experience and your team observes you learning from that experience. But it gives them permission to not hide when they've done something wrong, but to admit it and to realize that if it's, everything is fixable. We can always step a couple of steps back, start again, do it over. And that permission almost to admit that you've done something wrong is very, very powerful.
Well, also, if you can't acknowledge that something didn't go right, it could lead you down a disastrous path with whatever it is you're working on. You don't know that it's fixable. You don't know what needs to be fixed. So you go off on another tangent. Mm-hmm. And that's going to break down the communication, the project, the trust.
The integrity that people feel for you or not.
Right.
Exactly.
So
something that's really, really strong for me is reliability. And it goes hand in hand. One side of the coin is being reliable, the other side of the coin is having integrity. Because if you say you'll do it, then do it, is what I'm trying to say. And if you cancel at the last minute, if you don't show up, if you're late with something, people are going to wonder if you're going to do it again.
Right.
Because that's who you are to them. That's right. How you're showing up.
And if you can't do it, then let somebody know.
Yeah.
That's okay. But if you don't let anybody know that you can't and you just sort of think it'll go away, again, you're starting that breakdown in trust. You're starting that breakdown in relationship building, respect, and it makes your ability to communicate what your needs are and what the team's needs are and what the company's needs are. It makes it even more difficult.
Yeah.
The purpose of being able to communicate clearly is to help things go smoothly and to get all of the players the things that they need to be successful.
We're talking about this quite a bit in several different of our sessions, but talk less and listen more. Be aware, be self-aware of how much you speak in a situation. Is it dominant? Are you the predominant speaker in a situation? Everybody's voice is as important as yours.
I agree. I have a situation, I had a meeting last week. I'm a coaching partner for a bunch of leadership coaches. And one of the things that we had to tell each other when we met was what our strengths were and what our areas of opportunities were. And I told them point blank, I know that I talk too much. My job is to listen to you, so please call me on it. If you feel me rambling on and on, just stop me.
Yeah. I mean, some of us are just more verbal than others are.
Yeah.
And once you know that about yourself, then I made a habit a few years ago, 15 or so years ago, that where I literally in meetings would sit on my hands. So I wouldn't raise my hand to be recognized to talk.
Interesting.
Because I knew I was going to be one of the first people to talk and always had something to say. I just knew that about myself. So I had to find a mechanism to make me wait, to allow others to talk.
Interesting. I like that, sitting on your hands.
Yeah.
And if you're one of these people that talk with your hands,
that's exactly the reason. Yeah.
That's great.
And, if you just invite others to talk, and we've talked about this a little bit before, it is so enriching and so value added to do this with others. It's a huge piece of belonging in an organization, and diversity and inclusion and belonging are all things that we're striving for. Here's a very concrete way to add to the belonging of your whole team.
That's great. So we talked a little bit so far about the what that's involved in creating trust and strengthening communications. I'd like to spend a little bit of time now on being specific about how we do that, because it is so much more than just the words that you use. So can we talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Absolutely.
Let's start with words, though.
And this is interesting because what all of you who are listening to us get are words, but you're also able to hear our tone and our modulation of either talking rather softly,
right,
or making a big point by raising our voice. Those are techniques of how you communicate and what you want to emphasize, volume, expressions. You know, we try and stick a few little emojis into our email, even
yes,
professional emails, because it's so easy to misunderstand an all capital email. Sounds like shouting. Maybe the cap key was all caps was on and someone just didn't realize it. But I mean, you know, it's so easy to misinterpret what's going on in emails.
I have a friend I need to check that with because everything he writes is in caps.
Mm-hmm.
But he also uses exclamation points, so I'm pretty sure he is shouting.
Okay.
It's great.
You know, when we communicate, we need to be really careful of the body language we put off. Trying to be sincere, but rolling your eyes up in your head when somebody has a comment don't go together. You know, your tone has to match your body language, because people are going to believe what they see more than what they hear.
Well, you know, I think Maya Angelou said it perfectly. When people show you who they are, believe them. And she was talking about the everyday actions of people, how my words can be pretty disingenuous because I'm showing you that I'm not as nice as you think I am. I'm rolling my eyes, as you said. I'm looking at my watch.
You're important to me as I check my phone in the middle of a meeting. You know,
yes,
that action shows you so much more than what the words they might be saying.
Yeah,
I
would encourage the listeners out there to Google body language and listen to and watch some of the conversations that these body language experts have as they analyze what people are going through. It's absolutely fascinating.
You know, just to come back to it again, Vicki, words do matter.
Of course they do.
And when we're in a business situation especially, be careful of using acronyms. You know, we've got a good friend who just started a new job, and she was telling us that third or fourth day in, she was totally lost because everyone was using all of the company's normal acronyms, and she was lost.
Yeah.
And you're hesitant as the new person on the job to stop people and say, what does that stand for?
Right.
So just explain them. That's kind of your job as the older, more experienced person on the job, to explain the acronyms to the new person.
But also, don't beat yourself up too much if you forget, because this is a second language to you, or a third or a fourth language. It's going to happen. But when you can, make sure that there's some mechanism for everybody to learn that language.
Yeah.
What else can we do?
I think being very, very conscious of how we approach a situation. You know, some things work out really, really well when they're spontaneous and you just kind of work from the seat of your pants, so to speak. Other types of situations, maybe the most critical, maybe ones that may be a bit contentious, need to be planned out and thought through.
Right. I work with my clients really based on that Maya Angelou quote, and I teach them that they can make a conscious decision on how they show up so that people believe them. And I can teach them to do that in a way that they can prepare in 30 seconds. I never enter a situation not knowing how I'm going to show up. It's simple. I've thought about what the situation is. I've thought about who's going to be there. I've thought about my relationship with that person, how we communicate with our words, what I'm going to do with my body.
Okay.
And it only takes about 30 seconds. But when I walk into that room, I know exactly the person that I'm presenting to them. And it helps a lot.
And that preparation, I'm sure, gives you a tremendous amount of confidence.
Yes.
For when you are speaking, you don't have to think about the physical way that you're showing up because you already planned that and are now living your plan.
It also helps me keep my emotions in check.
Aha.
Because if it's going to be a contentious situation and I've thought about it and how I'm going to present, I can concentrate on my breathing, not being agitated, what are the triggers. It helps a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we've talked about today, Vicki, is all kinds of things to run through your mind when you're trying to communicate. One of the things that we can talk about next is intrapersonal and interpersonal communications. What's the difference there?
So that's our show for today. Thanks for listening. I'm Vicki Brown.
And I'm Suzanne Ferris.
And you've been listening to The Management Game.